Well, hello folks, I'm L.A. Little and this is your Daily NeoTA Wrap. We take a look at these markets. We do it from a neoclassical perspective. Each time we ask ourselves just one question: what happened today? What does it tell us about the coming ones? Do this show 4 times a week, Monday through Thursday, broadcast at or before 10 o'clock Eastern Time. It's archived on YouTube. It's under the channel L.A. Little. You can catch it there, subscribe, content's pushed, you'll be notified. Now, as far as what did happen to these markets, it was a sell-off today, a little bit of a bloodbath, so to speak. I see they got the Russell quote wrong again here. It was down about 1.04, not 0.4. But down almost 1% across the board. NDX held up the best, as did the NASDAQ. Those have been the strongest. We got some breakdowns starting to take place, not only in the indexes, but it is about to spread to the sectors and is starting to affect some of the sectors now. Bonds spike the other way. The dollar actually does a reversal today. Gold, silver get hit. There wasn't many places to go other than bonds today. Of course, bonds have been getting hit, so that was just a little reprieve, so to speak. If we go to the indexes, it's going to be an interesting read tonight, so let me walk you through what I believe is happening here and what it means. So the first thing to notice, we're going to start with the S&P. We're on the daily chart. Is you got a breakdown, right? You get under the low, you get under it, you have a slightly more volume. Volumes over here is about 30.9. Over here we got about 32. So you're doing a little bit more volume. You break a swing point low. That's an ABCD down, but it's almost done, right? So you had an ABCD here, right? That one projects just a little bit farther down, but it's almost done. And if you take this one and project it, that one is done. And so the ABCDs basically have already taken place. And so when you look at it from that perspective, okay, maybe this thing's not going to go anywhere in terms of breaking that swing point low. And if we pull over the monthly chart, the weekly chart, that also doesn't confirm any real damage at this point. The one thing that it is doing, and that it hadn't done prior to now, is it is breaking down on the weekly. And so let's draw that in. So you got a weekly retest regen here, and I can't quite draw it. There it is. And you can see now we're underneath it. So tomorrow's employment number, market-driven move, or whatever that may be, up or down, is going to have a lot to do with whether or not that holds. That's a bullish retest regen. If it doesn't hold, of course, that says, hey, the market's not in an uptrend, but instead in a sideways trend. And I suspect it is in a sideways trend. It's just a question of how long it's going to take it to prove that. If we look elsewhere, the real issue is down here. It's at all these swing point lows, right? That's where everything is. So up here, to me, is not that big a deal. So you got a little breakdown here. Okay, big deal. Break these guys, right? Break these guys down here, and then we'll have something going. So if we get a spike down into this area, then it would be something more to put some weight on, so to speak. Let's look at the NASDAQ, the NDX. These guys still holding up. Swing point low is a little bit farther down. It's right at the ledge, though. This is the area where you would expect the buyers to come in if they're going to. NDX, same sort of scenario, just a little bit weaker. And then we move over to the Russell. Now the Russell, remember, just broke out yesterday, turning sideways finally. And today, it's already back under the low. So, I mean, not the low, but the retest zone. So if we take that retest regen zone, draw it out, it's already underneath it. So now, as you know, and I've said this many times before, you kind of need 2 of these down here. You want to see one more under it to kind of confirm that this thing isn't going up. Don't quite have that. Tomorrow's going to be a big day on the domestic indexes with respect to that. So if I purely look at the technicals on the indexes, right, these are negative reads tonight. But we can't look at just one thing. One thing I do rather regularly is I try to put the whole picture together. I try not to focus on just one thing, but on multiple things, and then try to draw conclusions from that. So speaking of multiple things, let's go look at the sectors. We had a bearish retest regenerate trying to take place here. So you go into it, right? You come back down out of it. This is trying to regenerate lower. If it does regenerate lower, remember this thing is trying to get down to the top of the high volume bar. That's the October bar. Nobody else is doing this other than energy, right? That sector has been under pressure for a long time. XLB was under some pressure, but here you've definitely got some pressure taking place. And if you look at this from a weekly perspective, which we are now, right, you should get 2 to 3 bars continuation on multiple swing point breaks on the highest time frame, which is what is happening. So you break it on this bar, you get a continuation. If this continues down tomorrow, right, then you would have that 2-bar continuation, even if it goes sideways tomorrow. You know, when I say 2 to 3 bars continuation, sideways to me is a continuation. It's certainly not a reversal. So that's what that one looks like. So the IYT is worth watching. The other thing that was interesting, the SOX is already, and remember the SOX got pushed up on all the takeover news. And you know, that takeover news is great for those few companies that are involved, but everybody else, it's about the same. And so you need something to keep fueling that if it's going to continue. We don't have that. We don't have earnings expanding. We don't have the economy expanding. And so as a result of that, right, this thing's coming right back in. And where is it? It's doing a retest regen bullish. Want to see it hold right here, right now. That's another thing to watch tomorrow. Tomorrow's going to be a big day as a result of all these. Last night I said something about the XLB. It looked like it wanted to come back in. That's what it does. Volume picks up a little bit. And what you need to start noticing is that on these various sectors now, we're starting to get back to the lows, right? The swing point lows. So in other words, if we start to see these break, you get 2 or 3 of them to break, then pretty soon all of them want to break. And there's a couple already broke, and there's 2 or 3 or 4 actually on the cusp. This is one of them. So the IYT had already broke. XLB is on the cusp. XLE we already said, this one's already breaking down. It's broken down multiple swing points already. It finally goes into the big bar, gets into it, volume expands, and it gets into it fairly deep. This looks to go lower. Got the OPEC meeting tomorrow. Last weekend to members I'd said that I thought it was coming up like Tuesday or Wednesday, but it actually was Friday, so that's tomorrow. They're selling all oil off into that. I don't see, oil, there's way too much of it. We know that. Somehow we got a 20% bounce, but of course we had a 60% drop in oil. So a 20% bounce doesn't mean a lot. 33%, who cares? This thing's coming back in, getting pressured as oil gets pressured. Financials. Financials were trying to move up. Couldn't go there, right? Today they sell back down. Still not a bad looking chart, but they're not going up. XLI. If the economy really is getting weak, this is a sector you would expect to get hit. This one's coming down. It's trying to set up a break to do an ABCD structure to the downside. So again, as we keep talking about these various indexes, these sectors, here's another one that's getting ready to try to go break out some of these lows that are down here. So tomorrow, again, big day on that one. XLK, technology. You would think this one would be making new highs. It's not. It's going after a swing point low. XLP breaks a low today. So this one gets under the swing point low, going after another one. That already has turned it back to bearish. That's quote-unquote a safety sector, as is the utilities, which is about to break some lows on its own. It's already in a downtrend, just going to reconfirm that downtrend. XLV really can't get much going, and it also is coming after a swing point low. Why are all these stocks, if this market is at new highs or basically at new highs, Why do we see all of these rolling over? Well, it's because the indexes are rolling over, right? I mean, the whole thing is flattening out. And I know this doesn't, and this is one of the stronger ones, I know this doesn't look like it's flattening, but look at the projection here, and then look at how it's kind of just rolling now. Now you kind of had that here, but it eventually recovered and went to new highs. You got it happening again. Folks, if they start breaking swing point lows, then we're going to have something to look at. This is on weekly charts. Right now, just starting to roll over. If we continue that, it becomes a big deal. I've said many times, right, it's not the first move off the highs. Everybody wants to call the top. You know, it's not about calling the top. It's about seeing the first bounce that breaks, right? The first bounce that fails. If you go to the weekly chart on the S&P 500, you know, it's not up here that you want to try to call the top. What you want to see is you want to see some damage, a break of a swing point low. If this one were to print a break of that one, in other words, it would need 2 more bars to do that, to actualize this as a low, but that would be a low if it did it. If you start breaking these, right, and especially if you start breaking the lower ones, then you really have something going on. This is the critical spot. It's not up here. What's critical up here is a trade down to here that bounces and fails, right? If you fell up there, that's a big deal on the bounce, because that's when you could actually get your tops, right? It's usually, I mean, there are a few markets historically, you know, if you go back and study them, there's a few of them that come straight off the top and never give you a chance. You know, that, what I mean by chance is they don't give you any big bounce. And there's a few of those, but they're far and few between. The vast majority almost always give you an escape. It's the escape that fails that actually becomes an escape valve that then becomes the big issue, because that's how most of these get started. Right now, you know, the breadth of this market is pitiful. You've got a few stocks, mostly as a result of takeovers, mergers and acquisitions, that are carrying this market higher. Now, you know, I'll grant you there are stocks out there that are doing well. There's just not a lot of them. And so when you see the majority of your stocks slowly rolling over, and what I mean by that, you know, when I'm looking at just what I do, you know, if I take the neoclassical perspective, pop over here to the trading signals, and I've shown this before, you know, if I filter these to just be ones that are greater than $5 and doing 100K, right? How many breakouts do I have? 1, 2, 3. I have 3 breakouts. That's like nothing. That you know, there's a dearth of activity right now, and that's because these markets have flattened out. Their trading ranges are actually, you know, pathetic internals. That doesn't lead to markets that keep going. That's why we keep seeing these things break down. And you know, until that changes, that's exactly what we have, right? That's just what we have. All right, let's keep going here. So I was looking at the sectors. Okay, the sectors not telling us anything positive. The indexes not telling us anything positive. So are we to conclude that we're going down from here? Well, not quite. Not quite. Let's see why if we go over to the world markets. Now, some of these, and what I mean by these is those where the currencies are going up or staying up are the ones that are getting hit. All ordinary sets a new low, breaks down, breaks multiple swing points, and is doing it in a rather stiff fashion. You just lost a retest regen zone, so you know the Australian market taking a hit. But I want to go to the developed markets in Europe. Europe comes down last night, and the reason I'm going to Europe is the U.S. market is not trading on its own. It's trading off of Europe primarily. And so I think it's much more important for you to be watching the European indexes versus the U.S. indexes. Now, yes, we can diverge, and we can diverge for a while, But the real moves is here. It's not in our indexes, and how these move have a great influence on how our indexes move. So anyway, Europe, the CAC comes into the big bar, right? Volume there, well, the big bar being a wide price spread low, higher volume low, gets into the high of that low, has less volume, quite a bit less volume, flips around and closes outside of it. So the high on that bar was 4981, roughly 4982. You close at 4987. So you come down, you test into it, you can't break it down, you're going to try to flip it around. DAX. If we look at the DAX comes into the big bar, stays in the big bar, right? So just like last night, the DAX was the weaker of the two and not telling us that we were going to get a bounce. Remember, they were mixed signals last night. Well, they're mixed signals again. The only catch here is you almost, and you should expect the DAX to try to test the low. Still doesn't have the volume though. As it gets to the low, doesn't have the volume, flips around, closes near the top. These markets want to bounce in Europe. Now, Europe, to a great deal, is dependent right now on what's happening with Greece. Greece just took its payments. It was supposed to make a payment tomorrow and said under some rule that they have at the IMF that they could bundle their payments if they all fall in the same month. They could bundle them together and pay them at the end of the month. So what that says is Greece is going to let everything ride and put all the pressure on its creditors by not paying on time because they have that option. And so, they're playing every card they have to try to bring down and get those creditors to give them more favorable terms. Now, I suspect, just like I've said before, that somehow, some way, they're going to work something out and they're going to kick this can down the road like they always do. So when I look at this chart and I look at what's happening in Greece, you got a deadline extension now in terms of a deal for the 10th. I don't think that's going to happen. What's going to happen? This thing's going to drag out until the last week of the month, more than likely, which is going to be the end of the second quarter. That's where all the fireworks are probably going to happen. They're going to keep extending these dates. This is going to go on all month. What does that mean? That means these markets are going to be range bound. I don't think they're going anywhere. If anything happens, they would try to break down to the downside, but I suspect with the Greece deal on the tables, more than likely these markets are going to hang. So if Europe's hanging, U.S. isn't going to be able to break down in any big way. Yeah, we could get another couple percent down. That could come off that employment number tomorrow, because certainly on the domestic indexes, they're set up to try and go lower tomorrow. Looking elsewhere, Shanghai, wild night there, down almost 5%, flips around, closes up on the night, has volume as it pushes down. It came into the doji reversal on the 29th. Has more volume than that last night. Does not have more volume than the big bar, but did not test the bottom of that bar. I suspect tonight these guys are going to try to get to the top and test it. If you ask me, that's a mistake because I think they're going to fail. And you'd rather not have the test of the high volume bar unless you push even more volume. So tonight, once again, will be a big night in China. If we look at the Japanese market, Japan pushes back up but closes lower. This market is trying to set up a range trade. It's just not giving it up. Why? Because the yen continues to depreciate against the dollar. If we go to the Hong Kong market, where we're starting to see a lot more volatility, Hong Kong does the same thing. Volume presses higher. This market's trying to get into those bars I've been talking about for quite a while, which is down here. Almost got to them last night. I suspect they are going to get into that area. That's going to be a nice area to buy if it gives the opportunity, probably. Let me see. They did 30, and that was coming into 42, so you can see they don't have the volume. The lows down here, 26.8, 26.6, 27, and the low last night 27. So still another 600 points or so to get down in that area. That, of course, depends on China, because as you can see, this is trading off China. Just like we're trading off Europe, the Hang Seng is trading off the Chinese index. Let me quickly look at my friends in Toronto, see what they've got going. Well, they test the low, don't have the volume. 14,956. That actually looks like it's going to hold and try to press a little bit higher. And quickly for my Indian friends, let's see what happened here. So under, back over, a little bit more volume. This could get a little bit of a bounce, but this still is going after the lows again. And let me see what the weekly is. Yeah, it's going after those lows, and it's going to try to break them, and still going to try to get back down in this area over the longer term. And let me see if the Nifty 50 looks the same. And it does. Almost identical. Could get a bounce tonight, but I don't think it's going to go very far. All right. So tomorrow, big day. Primarily on the employment numbers. Big day over in China this evening. Because, you know, if you start seeing some sort of a big drop in China that holds, the fear factor is going to increase in other markets. It's when things go something large outside the boundaries of what they have been doing is when people notice. Let me quickly, before I finish here, I want to go to the ox markets, because there's another piece of information here that suggests that we're going to see those European markets try to rally tomorrow, and that is the currency market. If you look at the FXE, it does a over-under after an extended move, 2-bar reversal. That one looks to come back in. And then if we look at the bonds, here we go. If we look at the bonds, this one's going to be an interesting one tomorrow, because bonds press lower, had volume, broke a low. Tonight, they jump back up inside that. So what they're going to do is a bearish retest and try to regenerate lower. That employment number tomorrow, if it comes in really strong, I suspect that's going to send these guys lower. And it's going to set up another ABCD structure to the downside. If it doesn't, then this decline really was a false move, a fast false move, right? And you've actually got some sort of a bottom. Now, it's still playing with this huge bar on a weekly basis. Bottom over there is 120.05. Here it's 119.05. Bonds are going to have to push up fairly large tomorrow to hold that bar. Definitely won't have the volume. That also is an interesting number for tomorrow. So when I look at these, I want to see sectors hold their lows if I'm bullish. I want to see sectors hold their lows, and there's multiples, there's about 4 of them. I want to see bonds hold the lows. I want to see China not break down, and I want to see Europe rally. That's all I'm asking for, right? That's the sort of stuff that needs to take place. Now, we don't have to get them all, but you need to get most of them to keep this market from seeing more selling. Maybe not so much tomorrow as next week. In other words, you're setting the stage for another move. If this continues to work down, if we start seeing sectors break down, then this market is finally going to roll and do something a little bit larger outside of this little bitty range we have been trading in. Folks, thanks as always for joining me. Tell a friend, tell two. I'm LA. This is, and it was, your Daily NeoTA Wrap. Have yourself a great night, a great tomorrow. Make some money. I'll talk to you on Sunday. Good night.